My name is Kimberly McIntosh, 36 years old. If someone had asked me a year ago what the strongest part of my relationship was, I would have answered without hesitation: loyalty. I believed that if two people stayed committed long enough, sacrificed enough, and kept choosing each other every day, love would eventually survive anything. Looking back now, I understand that loyalty without respect slowly becomes self-destruction. I met Ryan Carter during our sophomore year of college. He was a psychology major with endless opinions about relationships, identity, and breaking social expectations. He had a magnetic personality that drew people toward him effortlessly. I was the complete opposite, a finance student working two part-time jobs because graduating without debt mattered more to me than having a social life. Somehow, we balanced each other. At least, that's what I believed. After graduation, we rented our first tiny apartment together. 2 years later, we got married, convinced we were building a life that would only grow stronger with time. At 29, we welcomed our twins, Ethan and Emma, into the world. Holding both of them in the hospital, I genuinely believed I had everything I'd ever dreamed of. Life moved quickly after that. I landed a position at a financial investment firm and worked harder than I ever thought possible. Long nights became normal. Weekends disappeared beneath reports and client meetings. Promotion after promotion followed until I eventually became a senior portfolio manager. The paycheck grew, but so did the responsibility. Ryan's path looked very different. He started in human resources. 6 months later, he quit. Then came marketing. Then freelance consulting. Finally, he announced that writing was his true calling. He wanted to build a blog focused on emotional awareness, relationships, and helping people become their authentic selves. The blog never really made money. Still, every time another career shift happened, I smiled and told him the same thing. If this is what makes you happy, I'll support you. Support slowly became another word for paying for everything. The mortgage, the vacations, his expensive laptop, photography equipment for the blog, weekend retreats where he insisted he'd reconnect with his creativity. Every dream Ryan chased somehow landed on my credit card. I never complained. I loved him. Or maybe I loved the version of him I kept hoping would come back. The strange part was that despite working 50 or 60 hours every week, I somehow became the parent who handled almost everything at home. I woke Ethan when he overslept, packed Emma's lunches, helped with homework, scheduled dentist appointments, attended school plays, coached soccer whenever another volunteer canceled. Ryan always had another networking event, another workshop, another article he absolutely had to finish before midnight. People constantly praised him for following his passion. Nobody ever noticed who was quietly carrying the family while he searched for himself. For years, I convinced myself it was temporary. One more opportunity, one more breakthrough, one more phase. Eventually, he'd appreciate everything I'd done. Eventually, we'd feel like partners again. I didn't realize that while I was building our future, he had quietly started rewriting mine without me. Everything finally collapsed on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Nothing about that day hinted my marriage was about to end. I just finished a 12-hour shift, stopped by the grocery store, cooked dinner, helped Ethan finish a science project involving a miniature volcano that somehow exploded twice before we got it right. Then I tucked Emma into bed, after reading her favorite fairy tale for what felt like the 100th time. By the time both children were asleep, exhaustion weighed on every part of my body. I walked downstairs, hoping Ryan and I might watch an episode of our favorite show together. 1 quiet hour. That was all I wanted. Instead, I found him standing at the kitchen sink, casually rinsing a dinner plate. Without looking at me, he spoke. "Kimberly, you're nothing more than a co-parent to me." For several seconds, my brain simply refused to process the sentence. He kept washing the plate. Water continued running. The room stayed painfully normal. Only my world had stopped. "I'm sorry," I whispered. What did you just say? He sighed softly, almost as though repeating himself was an inconvenience. You're not my real match anymore. My chest tightened. So that's who I am now? He finally turned around. There wasn't anger in his face. There wasn't sadness either. Only calm certainty. I think we've both known this relationship hasn't been real for a long time. Every word landed harder than the one before it. You don't challenge me emotionally anymore, he continued. You don't really understand the man I've become. I've grown so much these past few years, and honestly, you've stayed exactly the same. The same. That word echoed through my head. The same woman who financed nearly every dream he'd pursued. The same woman who worked 60-hour weeks. The same woman who still made breakfast every morning before sunrise. The same woman who somehow never forgot a parent-teacher conference, a dentist appointment, or a birthday party. Apparently, none of that counted as growth. I want someone who matches my energy, Ryan said quietly. Someone who understands my journey and appreciates how much I've evolved. I stared at him, unable to recognize the man standing in front of me. This was the person I'd defended countless times. The man whose failures I'd absorbed as if they were my own. The man I'd believed would someday look back and realize everything we'd built together. Instead, he looked at me like I was an obstacle he'd already outgrown. Then, he delivered the sentence that destroyed whatever remained inside me. I'm not saying we have to separate, he said. The twins deserve stability. We can still be great co-parents. I just think we should stop pretending we're something we're not. He spoke as though he was offering me a compromise, as though reducing 10 years of marriage into shared custody under one roof was somehow an act of honesty. I searched his face for regret, for hesitation, for anything. There was nothing, just certainty. A certainty that told me this conversation had been happening inside his head for months, while I'd been too busy trying to keep our family together to notice. So, I finally managed to say, that's all I am. Ryan crossed his arms. I think it's healthier if we're honest. Healthy. The word almost made me laugh. I'd spent years sacrificing sleep, opportunities, vacations, promotions, and pieces of myself trying to protect our family. Now honesty arrived only after he'd already decided my place in his life. I simply nodded. I understand. I turned toward the stairs. Behind me, his voice followed. Kimberly, aren't we going to talk about this? I paused for half a second. There was nothing left to discuss. The conversation had ended long before tonight. Tonight was simply the first time he'd bothered to tell me. Sleep never came. I lay awake replaying years of memories that suddenly looked completely different. The way he'd stopped reaching for my hand, the distracted kisses, the endless scrolling on his phone whenever I spoke. The excitement he reserved for strangers, while conversations with me became little more than logistics about bills or the twins. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, one painful truth finally settled over me. I'd spent years believing that if I worked harder, loved deeper, supported him more, eventually he'd choose me again. But you can't convince someone to value you after they've already decided you don't. The next morning, I woke before sunrise like always, made breakfast, packed lunches, braided Emma's hair, helped Ethan find his missing sneakers. Nothing about my routine changed, only me. When Ryan walked downstairs holding his coffee mug, he studied me carefully. You're awfully quiet. I have work. He leaned against the counter. Do you want to talk about what happened last night? I think it's important we stay on the same page. For the first time in years, I looked directly into his eyes without searching for reassurance. I think we're already on the same page. Confusion flickered across his face. He had expected tears, questions, arguments, maybe even promises that I'd become the woman he wanted. Instead, he got calm acceptance, cold, quiet, final. As I zipped the twins' backpacks and walked them toward the front door, a single thought repeated itself in my mind. If Ryan truly believed I was nothing more than a co-parent, then that was exactly who I would become. The first few days after that conversation felt strangely peaceful. Not because I was healing, because I had stopped expecting anything from Ryan. For years, every morning began with me wondering what I could do to make his day easier. Did he need encouragement? Did he want coffee? Was there another article I should read because he was proud of it? Had I forgotten another networking event he wanted me to attend? Those thoughts disappeared overnight. Now, my mornings belonged to Ethan and Emma. Nothing else. Ryan noticed the difference almost immediately. "You've barely said 10 words to me today," he commented one morning while I packed the twins' lunches. "I've been busy." "You seem distant." "I thought that was the arrangement." His forehead creased. "I didn't mean like this." I simply handed Emma her lunchbox. "Bus is here." The conversation ended there. That became our new routine. At dinner, I laughed with the twins, asked about spelling tests, listened to Ethan explain dinosaurs for 20 straight minutes. Ryan sat across the table, waiting for me to ask about his day. I never did. If he asked about mine, my answers stayed painfully short. "How was work?" "Fine." "Anything interesting happen?" "Nothing important." He kept trying to stretch conversations. I kept ending them. Not to punish him, because there was nothing left to give. One Friday evening, he came home carrying takeout from my favorite Italian restaurant. "I figured we could eat together after the kids go to bed." I glanced at the bags. "Thanks." That was all. After Ethan and Emma fell asleep, I reheated my portion, ate quietly at the kitchen island, washed my plate, and walked upstairs with a book. Ryan remained alone at the dining table. For the first time in years, he looked like someone waiting to be chosen. I remembered spending countless evenings doing exactly that. It no longer hurt. Over the following weeks, I redirected every ounce of energy I'd once poured into saving our relationship toward rebuilding myself. I joined a gym close to my office, started eating properly instead of grabbing fast food between meetings, bought clothes that actually fit instead of wearing the same worn-out business suits year after year. The changes were gradual. 5 pounds, 10, 20. By the end of 2 months, I'd lost nearly 30 pounds. My shoulders felt lighter. My confidence returned in ways I hadn't expected. Colleagues commented on how much happier I looked. Friends I hadn't seen in years invited me to dinners and weekend hikes. I'd forgotten I existed outside of being Ryan's provider. Meanwhile, Ryan watched every change with increasing confusion. "You've been going out a lot lately." "I've been seeing friends." "I didn't know you still talk to them." "I do now." He stood there for a moment. "You never invited me." I almost smiled. "You usually had plans." He couldn't argue, because it was true. The following Saturday, I surprised the twins with a trip to the aquarium. We spent hours watching sea turtles glide through enormous tanks. Emma insisted jellyfish looked like floating princess dresses. Ethan bought a stuffed shark from the gift shop using his allowance. It was one of the happiest days we'd had in months. When we returned home that evening, Ryan was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up immediately. "Where were you?" "The aquarium." His expression tightened. "It would have been nice to know." "The kids had fun." As their father, I should know where my children are. I calmly placed the car keys on the counter. "You've always trusted me with them before." "That's not the point." I looked at him. "No?" He hesitated. I would have liked to come." The sentence surprised both of us. I remembered dozens of weekends when I'd invited him to museums, parks, birthday parties, and school events. He'd almost always replied with the same answer. I've got deadlines. Funny how priorities change when you're the one being left behind. That Monday, during my lunch break, I met with my first divorce attorney. I didn't tell Ryan. Not because I was hiding something malicious, because I needed facts instead of emotions. The attorney listened carefully while I described our marriage. Then she asked a simple question. Who handles the majority of the children's daily care? I do. School? Me. Medical appointments? Mostly me. Homework? Me. She nodded thoughtfully. Start documenting everything. From that day forward, I documented everything. Every school pickup, every teacher conference, every doctor's appointment, every soccer practice, every email from teachers thanking me for responding so quickly, every permission slip I signed. I wasn't building a case against Ryan. I was preserving the truth. At the same time, I met with a financial advisor recommended by my attorney. Together, we reviewed every account I owned, every investment, every bonus. Everything was organized legally and transparently. No hidden assets, no deception, only preparation. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my own future. Ryan, meanwhile, seemed increasingly unsettled. One evening, he found me reading on the back patio after the twins had gone to bed. He walked outside carrying 2 mugs. I made you chamomile tea. I accepted it politely. Thank you. He sat beside me. You've lost weight. I have. You look really good. Thanks. Silence settled between us. Finally, he reached out and gently touched my hand. I didn't pull away. I simply removed my hand a second later to turn the page of my book. His fingers remained suspended in the air for a moment before dropping back into his lap. Kimberly. Yes? I feel like there's a wall between us. I closed my book slowly. A wall? You've completely shut me out. I studied his face. For weeks, he'd looked confused. Tonight, he looked frightened. I'm respecting the boundaries you set. His eyes widened. That's not what I meant. What exactly did you mean when you told me I was nothing more than a co-parent? I was trying to explain how disconnected I felt. And now we're disconnected. I didn't mean forever. I held his gaze. But I finally understand. He swallowed hard. I don't want this. A month ago, those words would have meant everything to me. Now, they barely stirred anything at all. I've spent a lot of time thinking, I said quietly. You were right about one thing. Hope flickered across his face. Our relationship changed a long time ago. His smile started to return. Then I finished the sentence. I just accepted it before you did. His expression collapsed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I stood, picked up my tea, and headed inside. Behind me, I heard him whisper my name. I didn't stop walking. That night, as I updated another page in the parenting log stored inside my desk drawer, I realized something unexpected. Ryan wasn't afraid of losing our relationship anymore. He was afraid of losing the woman who had quietly held his entire life together while asking for almost nothing in return. Ryan's efforts doubled after that night. He started waking up early, making coffee before I came downstairs, packing the twins' lunches once or twice a week. He suddenly wanted to attend soccer practice. He even volunteered to drive Emma to dance class one Saturday. 6 months earlier, I would have been thrilled. Now I simply thanked him and continued with my day. One evening, I came home to find candles lit across the dining room table. Soft music played in the background. Ryan walked out of the kitchen carrying 2 plates. I made your favorite pasta. It smells good. Can we have dinner together? Just us? I looked toward the hallway where the twins were finishing homework. I already ate with the kids. His smile faded. We need to keep trying. I am trying. At what? Being exactly what you asked me to be. His shoulders slumped. Kimberly. We're co-parents. He looked down at the table. I hate hearing you say that. I couldn't help noticing the irony. I'd hated hearing it too. The difference was that my pain had never mattered enough for him to reconsider. Now it finally mattered because he was the one feeling it. Over the following weeks, he became almost desperate. He suggested weekend getaways, couples counseling, date nights, movie nights after the twins went to sleep. Every suggestion arrived months too late. The hardest part wasn't saying no. It was realizing I genuinely meant it. One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected after a client meeting had been canceled. Ryan didn't hear me enter. His office door was partially open. I heard his voice. I don't know what happened, he said quietly. A woman's voice answered through the speakerphone. I recognized it immediately. Ashley Morgan, his ex-girlfriend from college. I thought she'd fight for us, Ryan admitted. I only said those things because I wanted her attention. She was always working, always focused on everyone else. I figured if she thought she might lose me, she'd finally make me the priority. Ashley sighed. So, you were bluffing? I never wanted a divorce. You told your own girlfriend she wasn't your real match. I know. You basically pushed her away. I didn't think she'd actually stop loving me. Silence. Then Ashley asked the question that changed everything. Do you love Kimberly? Ryan answered almost immediately. More than anything. Then why did you treat her like she was disposable? He never answered. I quietly stepped away before either of them realized I had been home. There was nothing left to wonder about. His words hadn't been honest. They'd been calculated. He'd tried to manipulate me into chasing him harder. Instead, he had taught me how to live without him. That evening, after the twins were asleep, I sat alone in my home office. Inside the top drawer sat a thick manila folder. Months of documentation. Parenting schedules, school emails, medical records, financial statements, legal notes. Every page represented another moment I'd quietly prepared, while Ryan believed I would eventually give in. I picked up my phone. My attorney answered on the second ring. I'm ready. The following Thursday, Ryan came home expecting another ordinary evening. Instead, he found me sitting at the kitchen table. The same kitchen, the same chair, the same place where months earlier he'd calmly dismantled our marriage. A folder rested between us. He smiled uncertainly. You wanted to talk? Yes. I slid the folder toward him. He opened it casually. His expression changed after the first page, then the second, then the third. Kimberly. I've filed for divorce. The color drained from his face. No. I have. He shook his head repeatedly. No, you're overreacting. I don't think I am. His breathing became uneven. We can fix this. I spent years trying. I made one mistake. I looked at him quietly. No, you made one sentence. You made one decision long before you spoke that sentence. Tears immediately filled his eyes. I didn't mean it. I know. You know? I heard your conversation with Ashley. His entire body froze. Every excuse disappeared before he even spoke. You said you wanted to manipulate me. He lowered his head. I was scared. So was I. You stopped loving me. No. I shook my head gently. You taught me how. For the first time since we'd met nearly 2 decades earlier, Ryan completely broke down. He buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry. I know. I'll quit the blog. I know. I'll get a regular job. I know. I'll do anything. I believed him. That was the tragedy. He finally meant every promise. Unfortunately, he had waited until after destroying the trust those promises required. He slowly opened the rest of the folder. My attorney's proposed parenting plan, financial disclosures, property records, documentation showing I had been the primary caregiver for years. His voice barely escaped. You've been preparing. For months. You already knew. I knew the night you called me a co-parent. He looked around the kitchen. The family photos, the children's drawings on the refrigerator, the life we'd built together. I never thought you'd actually leave. I know. His next question came almost as a whisper. Is there really no chance? I thought about the woman I'd been. The exhausted woman who believed love meant carrying another person's weight forever. The woman who apologized for problems she hadn't created. She deserved better. So did the woman sitting across from him now. No. Weeks later, the divorce moved forward quietly. There were no screaming matches, no dramatic courtroom scenes, only evidence, facts, consistency. The documentation spoke for itself. The custody evaluator noted that I had handled the overwhelming majority of school responsibilities, medical care, extracurricular activities, and daily parenting. The judge awarded me primary physical custody. Ryan received regular parenting time and dinner visits during the week. He accepted the ruling without argument, perhaps because he finally understood how absent he'd been while convincing himself he'd been emotionally evolved. A few months later, Ethan and Emma helped me unpack boxes inside our new home. Each child finally had their own bedroom. A park sat at the end of the street. The first evening, we ate pizza on the living room floor because the dining table hadn't arrived yet. Emma smiled. It feels peaceful here. It does. 2 years have passed since then. The twins are thriving. Ryan has become a more present father than he ever was during our relationship, and for that, I'm genuinely grateful. As for me, life surprised me again. I met Daniel Brooks, a pediatric nurse, while taking Ethan to a routine follow-up appointment after a soccer injury. He didn't rescue me, he simply met me where I already stood. Strong, whole, happy. One Wednesday evening, after Ryan dropped the twins off, he lingered at the front door. I think about what I said every single day. I nodded. I know. I'd give anything to take it back. I know. He looked down before quietly asking, will there ever be another chance for us? I smiled, not out of bitterness, but because I finally understood my own worth. There is no us anymore, Ryan. He closed his eyes. I finished the sentence he'd once given me. We're just co-parents now. For a brief moment, I saw the same heartbreak in his eyes that had once lived in mine. Then he nodded, turned, and walked toward his car. I closed the door. Behind me, Ethan and Emma were laughing over a board game in the living room. That sound reminded me what winning had really meant all along. It was never about revenge. It was about finally choosing the person I should have chosen years earlier. Myself.